I never thought Jennifer would throw me out of my own home 3 days after we buried her mother. Standing in the doorway of the house I'd built with my bare hands 40 years ago, she handed me a suitcase and said the words that shattered my heart. "Find somewhere else to die, Dad. You're useless now." The rain soaked through my jacket as I stood there watching my only daughter slam the door in my face. That's when I decided to play the game her way. 6 months before Margaret passed away, anyone looking at our family would have seen the American dream come to life. We lived in a beautiful colonial home in Westbrook, Connecticut, the kind of place with white pillars and black shutters that I'd constructed myself back in 1984 when Jennifer was just a baby. The 4-bedroom house sat on 3 acres of manicured lawn, with oak trees. I'd planted myself now towering over the property, like protective guardians. My wife Margaret, at 62, still had that radiant smile that caught my attention at a church social 41 years ago. Even with silver streaking through her auburn hair, she moved through our home with the grace of someone who knew every creak in the floorboards, every story held within those walls. Jennifer, our only child, had grown into what we thought was a successful woman at 38. She lived just 20 minutes away in Hartford with her husband Bradley and our 2 grandchildren Emma and Tyler. I'd spent my entire adult life building homes for other families through my construction company, Brennan and Sons Construction, though the irony wasn't lost on me that I never had a son to pass it on to. 5 years ago, at 60, I'd sold the business to my foreman, Mike Sullivan, for $8 million. It was time to enjoy the fruits of my labor with Margaret, maybe travel to those places she'd circled in travel magazines over the years. We invested most of the money carefully, setting aside funds for the grandchildren's college education and our retirement years. Margaret came from old Connecticut money through her father, William Hartley, who'd owned textile mills throughout New England. When he passed 15 years ago, Margaret inherited his estate, though she never flaunted the wealth. She continued shopping at the same grocery store, tending her garden, and hosting Sunday dinners for the family. Everything changed on a humid Tuesday in June when Dr. Morrison called us into his office. The words pancreatic cancer and stage 4 hung in the air like storm clouds. Margaret gripped my calloused hand, her wedding ring, pressing into my palm, and asked the only question that mattered. "How long do I have?" "6 months, maybe 8 with treatment." Dr. Morrison replied, his voice gentle but firm. That evening, Jennifer arrived at our house before we'd even had time to process the news ourselves. Somehow, she always had a way of knowing things before we told her. She swept into the kitchen where Margaret was mechanically preparing dinner, going through the motions of normalcy. "Mom, Dad, I heard about the diagnosis." Jennifer said, her perfectly manicured hands reaching for Margaret. "Bradley's partner at the firm knows Dr. Morrison. We're here for you, whatever you need." At first, her attention seemed like a blessing. Jennifer started visiting daily, bringing organic meals and researching treatment options. She organized our medical appointments, created color-coded binders for insurance paperwork, and even took time off from her job as a marketing director to accompany Margaret to chemotherapy sessions when I had to meet with our financial advisor. But as the weeks passed, I began noticing subtle changes in my daughter's behavior. She'd arrive early in the morning, often finding reasons to be in Margaret's study, where we kept important documents. When I'd enter the room, she'd quickly close file cabinets or slip papers into her designer handbag, explaining she was helping organize things for Mom. Bradley started joining her on weekends, and while Jennifer tended to Margaret, he'd wander through our house with an appraising eye. One Saturday, I found him in the basement with a measuring tape documenting dimensions in a small notebook. "Just helping Jennifer think about the future," he said when I questioned him, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "You know how she likes to plan ahead." The moment that truly opened my eyes came in early August. I'd returned from the pharmacy earlier than expected, entering through the back door to avoid waking Margaret, who'd had a difficult night. Jennifer's voice carried from the living room where she was on the phone, speaking in hushed but excited tones. "The property alone is worth at least $12 million in today's market," she was saying. And that's before we consider subdivision possibilities. I've already had preliminary discussions with Hartfield developers. They're very interested in the location for luxury condos. My blood ran cold as I stood frozen in my own kitchen. She continued unaware of my presence. Once we have full control, we can move quickly. Dad's getting older anyway, and he'll be lost without Mom. It would actually be kinder to have him in a managed care facility, where professionals can look after him properly. I slipped back outside, my heart pounding. That evening, after Jennifer left, I searched her old room, the one we'd kept as a guest room, but still called Jenny's room, out of habit. Behind a stack of Margaret's photo albums in the closet, I discovered a manila folder that confirmed my worst fears. Inside were business cards from 3 different real estate development companies, preliminary architectural sketches showing our property divided into 16 luxury units, and a projected profit statement showing figures that made my construction experience boil with rage. The plans were dated just 2 weeks after Margaret's diagnosis. My little girl, the one I'd taught to ride a bike in our driveway, who'd helped me plant roses along the front walk, was already planning to demolish our home before her mother had even passed. The sketches showed no trace of the house I'd built with my own hands, no memory of the garden Margaret had tended for decades. Just cold, modern units designed to maximize profit from every square foot of the land where we'd raised our family. I carefully returned everything to its place, my hands steady, despite the storm raging inside me. 40 years in construction had taught me that the strongest foundations were often invisible to the naked eye, and that sometimes you had to wait for the right moment to reveal structural weaknesses. As I walked back to check on Margaret, I made a decision. If Jennifer wanted to play this game, I'd let her think she was winning. But I'd learned long ago that, in construction, as in life, it's not who swings the hammer first that matters. It's who drives the final nail. Margaret's condition deteriorated rapidly. As September arrived, the New England leaves beginning their brilliant transformation, while my wife's light slowly dimmed. The cancer was aggressive, consuming her from within, even as she maintained her dignity and grace. Our master bedroom became a makeshift hospital room with medical equipment crowding the space where we'd shared 40 years of dreams and whispers. Jennifer's presence intensified during these final weeks. She arrived each morning at 7 sharp, her silver BMW pulling into our driveway with clockwork precision. She'd sweep in, carrying green smoothies and organic supplements, though Margaret could barely keep down water by then. To anyone watching, Jennifer appeared to be the devoted daughter, sacrificing her time and energy for her dying mother. "Let me handle everything, Dad," she'd say, patting my shoulder with what seemed like genuine concern. "You just focus on being with Mom. I'll take care of all the paperwork and legal matters. It's what I do best." I watched her efficiency with growing unease. She commandeered Margaret's desk, sorting through decades of accumulated documents with systematic determination. Bank statements, investment portfolios, property deeds, insurance policies, everything disappeared into Jennifer's organized files. When I offered to help, she'd wave me away with practiced excuses about my needing rest or spending quality time with Margaret. Bradley's visits increased too, though he spent most of his time outside the house. I'd catch glimpses of him through windows, photographing the property from various angles, measuring the distance from our boundary lines to the street, making notes in his ever-present tablet. One afternoon, I overheard him on a conference call in our garage, discussing zoning regulations and potential variances with someone he addressed as Commissioner. The hospice nurse Maria, a kind woman with decades of experience, pulled me aside one evening after Jennifer had spent 3 hours closeted with Margaret while I was banished to the garden. "Mr. Brennan," Maria said softly, her dark eyes filled with concern, "your wife is asking for you constantly when your daughter isn't here. But Mrs. Brennan seems to become agitated whenever I suggest Jennifer take a break." I found my voice thick with emotion. "My daughter says she's helping Margaret with final wishes, getting things in order." Maria's expression remained professionally neutral, but I caught the slight tightening around her eyes. "In my experience, the best final gift we can give our loved ones is our presence, not paperwork. Perhaps you could speak with your daughter about balance. That night, after Jennifer finally left at 10:30, I sat beside Margaret's bed, holding her frail hand. The woman who'd once gardened for hours could barely squeeze my fingers. "Arthur," she whispered, her voice like autumn leaves rustling. "I need to tell you something." I leaned closer, breathing in the faint scent of lavender from her favorite lotion. "Save your strength, sweetheart." "No," she insisted with surprising firmness. "Listen carefully. I've made arrangements. Different from what Jennifer thinks. Trust Samuel Patterson. He has everything you'll need." Samuel Patterson was our family lawyer, but Jennifer had been pushing for us to use Bradley's firm instead, claiming they specialized in estate planning. Margaret had seemed to agree, signing papers Jennifer brought her always when I was conveniently elsewhere. "Margaret, what kind of arrangements?" A ghost of her old mischievous smile crossed her lips. "Remember when we built this house? You always said the foundation was the most important part, even if no one could see it." Before I could ask more, she drifted back to sleep, leaving me puzzled by her cryptic words. The next few days blurred together in a haze of medication schedules, whispered conversations, and the steady stream of visitors saying goodbye. Jennifer orchestrated everything with corporate efficiency, even scheduling 15-minute slots for Margaret's oldest friends. She intercepted sympathy cards and flowers thanking people on our behalf before I even knew they'd reached out. 3 days before Margaret passed, I discovered Jennifer in the study at 5 in the morning. Legal documents were spread across the desk, and she was on the phone with someone speaking in urgent whispers. "Yes, I have her signature on all the necessary transfers," she was saying. "The house deed, the Hartley Trust documents, power of attorney, everything we discussed. Once she passes, we can move immediately." She spun around when a floorboard creaked under my foot, her face cycling through surprise guilt, and finally settling on indignation. "Dad, you scared me. I couldn't sleep, so I thought I'd organize Mom's papers for you." At 5 in the morning. "Grief doesn't follow business hours," she replied smoothly, gathering documents into a leather portfolio. "Mom wanted me to ensure everything was properly handled. You know how particular she was about details." I nodded slowly, playing the part of the confused, grieving husband. "Of course. Thank you for taking care of things, Jenny." Her shoulders relaxed at my use of her childhood nickname. "That's what family does, Dad. We take care of each other." As she brushed past me, portfolio clutched to her chest, I wondered when my daughter had become someone I no longer recognized. Margaret's final day arrived with unexpected sunshine streaming through our bedroom windows. The September light had that particular quality that only comes with autumn in New England golden, and somehow more precious, because you know winter is coming. Jennifer stationed herself at Margaret's bedside, barely allowing me moments alone with my wife. When Margaret's sister Catherine arrived from Boston, Jennifer tried to manage her visit too, but Catherine, made of sterner stuff, simply ignored her niece and sat on Margaret's other side. "I need a moment with my sister," Catherine said firmly, her tone brookering no argument. "Alone." Jennifer reluctantly left, and I started to follow, but Catherine caught my arm. "You stay, Arthur. Margaret wants you here." For the next hour, the sisters spoke in low voices, sometimes in the private language of shared childhood memories. Several times, Catherine nodded gravely at Margaret's whispered words, her expression growing more serious. As evening approached, Margaret asked for Jennifer. Our daughter practically ran into the room, eager to reclaim her position. I watched from the doorway as Margaret motioned her closer, whispering something that made Jennifer's face transform with barely contained excitement. She nodded rapidly, squeezing Margaret's hand. "I understand completely," Jennifer said loud enough for me to hear. "Don't worry about anything. I'll take care of Dad, just like you asked." Margaret's eyes found mine over Jennifer's shoulder. Despite the pain medication, they held perfect clarity, and something else, something that looked almost like satisfaction. She mouthed 3 words to me: "Trust the plan." Margaret Eleanor Hartley Brennan passed away at 8:47 that evening, surrounded by family. Jennifer immediately took charge, calling the funeral home, notifying relatives, even selecting the clothes Margaret would wear for the viewing. She moved through our house like a general conducting a campaign, Bradford at her side, taking notes and making calls. I sat in my workshop behind the house, surrounded by tools that had built our life, feeling more lost than I'd ever been. The steady presence who'd anchored my world for 4 decades was gone, and in her place was a daughter I no longer recognized, already measuring our home for demolition. But Margaret's words echoed in my mind, "Trust the plan." My wife had been many things, but she'd never been naive. If she had a plan, it was built on foundation stones I couldn't yet see. As I ran my hands over the worn handle of my favorite hammer, I decided to do what she'd asked. I would trust her plan, whatever it might be. The workshop door opened, and Jennifer peered in her expression, mixing impatience with concern. "Dad, you need to come inside. We have arrangements to discuss, and I've scheduled the will reading for next week. Bradley's partner will handle everything. It's what Mom wanted." I stood slowly, letting her see an old man's grief and confusion. "Whatever you think is best, Jenny. I'm glad you're here to handle things." Her smile was razor-sharp with triumph. "Don't worry, Dad. I'll take care of everything just like I promised Mom." As I followed her back to the house that would soon no longer be mine, I thought about the difference between what people say and what they mean. Margaret had indeed whispered something to Jennifer in those final moments, but I was beginning to suspect my daughter had heard only what she wanted to hear. The question was, what had Margaret really said, and what plan had my clever wife set in motion? The morning of Margaret's funeral dawned crisp and clear, one of those perfect September days that made you understand why people fall in love with New England. I stood at our bedroom window, watching the sun paint the oak trees gold, the same trees Margaret and I had watched grow from saplings to giants over our 40 years in this house. Jennifer had orchestrated every detail of the funeral with military precision. She'd chosen Riverside Memorial, the most prestigious funeral home in the county, and selected a mahogany casket that cost more than most people's cars. When I suggested Margaret would have preferred something simpler, Jennifer patted my arm condescendingly. "Dad, the Hartley family has a certain standing in the community. We need to honor that. Don't worry about the cost. I'm handling everything." The service itself was beautiful, I had to admit. The church overflowed with flowers, and hundreds of people came to pay their respects. My old construction crew served as pallbearers, men I'd worked alongside for decades, who'd built their own lives while helping me build homes for others. Mike Sullivan, who'd bought my business, gripped my shoulder with calloused hands. "Beautiful service, Arthur. Margaret would have loved it." He said, his eyes suspiciously bright. "You need anything, you call me, day or night." Jennifer played her role perfectly, the grieving daughter supporting her elderly father. She guided me to the front pew, tissues at the ready, her black designer dress impeccable. Bradley stood at her side in a suit that probably cost more than I'd spent on clothes in the past decade, while Emma and Tyler fidgeted in their formal wear, clearly uncomfortable with the spotlight. During the eulogy, which Jennifer had insisted on delivering herself, she spoke eloquently about Margaret's grace, her dedication to family, her charitable work with the hospital auxiliary. She even managed to produce tears at appropriate moments, though I noticed they never quite disturbed her perfectly applied makeup. My mother's final wish, Jennifer said, her voice carrying across the packed church, was that I take care of everything, that I ensure her legacy continues. I promised her I would, and I intend to keep that promise. Catherine, sitting beside me, made a small sound that might have been a cough, or might have been disgust. When I glanced at her, her expression was carefully neutral, but her hands were clenched so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had gone white. After the service, the burial, and the reception that followed, our house filled with well-meaning friends and relatives. Jennifer had hired a catering service, transforming our home into something from a magazine spread. She flitted between groups of guests, accepting condolences, making connections, already working the room like the marketing executive she was. As evening fell and the last guests departed, I found myself alone in the kitchen, loading dishes into the dishwasher Margaret had insisted we buy last Christmas. Jennifer appeared in the doorway, Bradley hovering behind her. "Dad, why don't you go rest? We'll finish cleaning up," she offered, but something in her tone made it sound less like kindness and more like dismissal. "I'm fine," I replied, continuing to rinse plates. "Keeping busy helps." "Actually, Dad, we should talk," Jennifer said, exchanging a look with Bradley. "About the arrangements going forward. I know it's soon, but Mom was very specific about her wishes." I dried my hands slowly on Margaret's favorite dish towel, the one with sunflowers that she'd bought at a craft fair 20 years ago. "What kind of arrangements?" "Living arrangements," Bradley interjected, earning a sharp look from Jennifer. He cleared his throat. "What Jennifer means is, we want to make sure you're taken care of during this difficult time." "I'm staying at the house tonight," Jennifer announced, "to help you adjust. Emma and Tyler are in the car with their overnight bags. We'll all stay for a few days, help you transition." Something cold settled in my stomach. Transition to what exactly? Jennifer's smile was sympathetic, but didn't reach her eyes. "Dad, we need to be realistic. This house is too big for one person, and at your age, with your grief, it's important to have support. I've been looking into some wonderful senior communities where you'd have people your own age, activities, medical care if needed. I'm 65, not 95, I said carefully, and this is my home." "Of course it is." She soothed, the same tone she'd used when Emma was small and didn't want to leave the playground. "No one's saying you have to leave right away. The will reading is next week, and then we'll have a better idea of the timeline." The will reading. She kept mentioning it with poorly concealed anticipation. I nodded slowly, playing the part of the confused widower. "Whatever you think is best, Jenny. I'm grateful you're here to help." The next 3 days passed in a blur of Jennifer's increasingly bold reorganization of our life. She moved into the master bedroom, claiming she couldn't sleep in her old room with so many memories. She had Bradley bring boxes from their house and began sorting through Margaret's belongings with unsettling efficiency. "Some of these things could go to charity," she said, holding up Margaret's favorite cardigan, the blue one she wore for gardening. "Or we could have an estate sale. These vintage items are quite popular now." I watched from the doorway as she dismantled 40 years of life with clinical detachment. Photo albums disappeared into boxes labeled storage, while Margaret's jewelry vanished into Jennifer's purse for safekeeping. On the third morning, I woke to the sound of multiple vehicles in our driveway. Through the window, I saw Bradley directing a locksmith's van, while Jennifer paced nearby, phone pressed to her ear. My confusion lasted only until Jennifer knocked on my bedroom door. "Dad, can you come downstairs? We need to talk." I dressed carefully, taking my time, some instinct warning me to be fully prepared for whatever was coming. In the living room, Jennifer and Bradley sat on the sofa, like a tribunal, a stack of documents on the coffee table between us. The locksmith waited in the foyer toolbox at his feet. "Dad, I didn't want to do this so soon," Jennifer began, though her excited energy suggested otherwise. "But the will reading was moved up to this afternoon, and Bradley's partner called with the details. Mom left me the house and all the liquid assets from the Hartley Trust." "I see," I said slowly. "And what did she leave me?" Jennifer shuffled papers, producing a document. "She set up a monthly allowance for you, managed through the trust. It's quite generous, really. $1,500 a month as long as you—" She paused, scanning the page. "Maintain appropriate living arrangements approved by the trustee." "Who's the trustee?" "Well, me, of course." She leaned forward, her expression attempting concern. "Dad, I know this is hard, but Mom knew you'd need help managing things without her. She wanted to make sure you were taken care of, but also that the family assets were preserved." I stared at my daughter, this stranger wearing Jennifer's face. "You're evicting me from my own home." "Evicting is such a harsh word," Bradley interjected. "Think of it as transitioning to a more suitable living situation. Jennifer's already found several excellent senior communities. I built this house, I said quietly, with my own hands, every board, every nail. And you did a wonderful job, Jennifer said patronizingly. Which is why Hartfield Developers is so interested in the property. Dad, this house is sitting on $12 million of prime real estate. It would be irresponsible to let it deteriorate with just one person rattling around in it. Deteriorate. I looked around the meticulously maintained room. I've kept this place in perfect condition for 40 years. Jennifer stood abruptly, her patience evaporating. Dad, I'm trying to be kind about this, but the decision is made. The contracts with Hartfield are already signed. Demolition is scheduled for next month. You need to pack what you want to keep and make other arrangements. You signed contracts before your mother was even buried. I signed them 2 weeks ago. She snapped, then caught herself. I mean the preliminary agreements. Mom understood the value of planning ahead. 2 weeks ago, Margaret was still alive. Barely, Jennifer muttered, then had the grace to look ashamed. Dad, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. You have an hour to pack a suitcase. Bradley will help you load your truck. The locksmith is here to change the locks for insurance purposes. I stood slowly, my knees protesting, letting her see an old man's defeat. And if I refuse? Then Bradley will call the sheriff's office, Jennifer said coolly. I have legal ownership as of the will reading this afternoon. I'm trying to spare you that embarrassment. Through the window, I could see Emma and Tyler in Bradley's Mercedes both hunched over their phones, carefully not looking at the house. My heart broke a little more seeing my grandchildren complicit in this betrayal, though I wondered how much they truly understood. One suitcase, I repeated. After 40 years, one suitcase. I'll store some of your things, Jennifer offered magnanimously. The important items. You can have them once you're settled somewhere appropriate. I climbed the stairs slowly, hearing Jennifer directing the locksmith to begin with the back door. In the bedroom, I packed methodically a few changes of clothes. Margaret's photograph from our wedding day. My father's watch. Important documents I'd kept in the workshop safe. Everything fit into the battered suitcase we'd bought for our honeymoon. When I came back downstairs, Bradley was waiting by the front door, clearly uncomfortable, but committed to his wife's plan. I'll walk you to your truck, Arthur. Make sure you have everything you need. Jennifer stood in the doorway of what was no longer my home, the morning sun creating a halo effect around her perfectly styled hair. The locksmith was already working on the front door, the sound of drilling unnaturally loud in the morning quiet. The allowance starts next month, she called out as I loaded my suitcase into the truck. As long as you're living somewhere I approve. There's a nice place in Bridgeport Sunset Manor. They have an opening in their memory care unit. Memory care. I turned to face her. Jennifer, I don't have dementia. Not yet, she said, and for a moment I saw something almost like regret flash across her face. But at your age, it's best to be prepared. Find somewhere else to die, Dad. You're useless now. The words hung between us like a physical blow. Even Bradley looked shocked, taking a step back from his wife. Emma had looked up from her phone, her young face troubled, but Jennifer was already turning away, dismissing me like an unwanted salesman. I climbed into my truck, started the engine, and drove away from the house I'd built, the life I'd created, the daughter I'd raised. In the rearview mirror, I watched Jennifer direct the locksmith, already claiming her territory. But as I turned the corner, heading toward an uncertain future, I remembered Margaret's final words, Catherine's grim expression at the funeral, and Samuel Patterson's name. My wife had been the smartest person I'd ever known. If she'd left me with nothing but faith in her plan, then that would have to be enough. As I drove through the streets of Westbrook, rain began to fall, matching my mood. But somewhere beneath the grief and betrayal, a small spark of hope remained. Margaret had promised to protect me. Now I had to trust that promise and wait for her plan to reveal itself. The rain intensified as I pulled into the parking lot of a modest motel on Route 1, the kind of place that catered to traveling salesmen and people running from something. As I checked in, paying cash for a week in advance, I made my first decision as a man without a home. I would wait. I would watch. And I would trust the woman who'd loved me for 41 years to have one last surprise up her sleeve. The seaside motor lodge wasn't much to look at with its faded blue paint and flickering neon sign, but it was clean and quiet, and the desk clerk asked no questions when I paid cash for a week up front. Room 12 became my temporary refuge, its worn carpet and generic artwork, a stark contrast to the home I'd been forced to leave just hours before. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in shock from the morning's events when my phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer, "Dad, please confirm you found appropriate lodging. Remember, your allowance depends on approved living arrangements." I stared at the message, anger and disbelief warring in my chest. My daughter was treating me like a child, worse than a child, like an inconvenient problem to be managed. Instead of responding, I deleted the message and pulled out an older phone from my suitcase, one I'd used for construction business years ago. Some instinct had made me grab it from my workshop safe, and now I was glad. My first call was to Samuel Patterson. Sam had been our family lawyer for 30 years, handling everything from the purchase of our house to setting up my business corporation. His secretary Dorothy gasped when she heard my voice. "Arthur, oh my goodness, we've been trying to reach you. Mr. Patterson said if you called to put you through immediately, no matter what he was doing." 30 seconds later, Sam's gravelly voice filled my ear. "Arthur, thank God. I heard about what happened this morning. How are you holding up?" "You heard already. Small town big news, especially when Jennifer Brennan Morrison starts throwing her weight around. Where are you now?" I told him about the motel, and he made a disapproving sound. "That won't do. Listen, can you come to my office? Use the back entrance. There are things we need to discuss, things Margaret specifically instructed me to share with you after. An hour later, I sat in Sam's private office, accepting a cup of coffee from Dorothy, who clucked over me like a mother hen. Sam closed the door firmly and activated what he called his privacy measures, which seemed excessive until he explained. "Margaret came to see me 6 weeks ago." He began settling behind his mahogany desk. "She was alone, insisted on it. Said she'd discovered some disturbing things about Jennifer's plans and needed to take protective action. The will Jennifer mentioned leaving everything to her." Sam's weathered face creased in what might have been a smile. "Oh, that will exists. Margaret signed it 3 weeks ago with Jennifer and Bradley's lawyer as witnesses. Completely legitimate. Left the house and the Hartley Trust assets to Jennifer, with a small monthly allowance for you." My heart sank. "Then it's over." "Arthur, how long have you known me?" 30 years. "And in those 30 years, have I ever let you down? More importantly, did Margaret ever do anything without thinking 10 steps ahead?" He pulled out a sealed envelope from his desk safe, Margaret's handwriting across the front. "For Arthur, when the wolf shows her teeth." "She said you'd understand that reference," Sam continued. "She also said to tell you that everything signed in the last month has what she called a foundation stone. I assumed you'd know what that meant." I did. When building houses, I always placed a special stone in the foundation, marked with the date and a blessing. It was invisible once the house was complete, but it anchored everything. She built in a failsafe. Several, actually. Sam opened another file. "First, that will everyone's so excited about. It has a codicil filed separately with the probate court 2 days before Margaret signed the main document. Jennifer has no idea it exists. Would you like to hear the relevant passage?" I nodded, my hands gripping the coffee cup. Sam adjusted his reading glasses. "All bequests in this will are conditional upon the beneficiary providing appropriate care support and residence for my husband, Arthur Brennan, until his natural death. Eviction, abandonment, neglect, or any action designed to force relocation or institutionalization will result in immediate and complete reversion of all assets to Arthur Brennan. This condition is monitored and enforced by the designated trustee. Jennifer said she was the trustee. Of the main estate, yes. But the codicil names a different trustee for this specific provision. Sam's smile widened. You. I stared at him. I'm the trustee monitoring whether Jennifer is taking care of me. Brilliant. Wasn't it Margaret knew Jennifer would be so focused on the money she'd never think to question the details. There's more. She transferred the $43 million from the Hartley Trust into a special holding account 3 weeks before her death. Jennifer thinks she has access to it, but it requires 2 signatures for any withdrawal over $10,000. The trustees and the beneficiaries. Since you're the trustee of the care provision, she needs my signature to access the money. I sat back astounded by my wife's foresight. What about the house? Ah, that's even better. The deed was transferred to the Hartley Family Preservation Trust a month ago. Jennifer is listed as the beneficiary, but look at the trust documents. He handed me a thick folder. Page 47, subsection C. I flipped through the pages, finding the relevant section. My construction experience had taught me to read contracts carefully, and what I found made me smile for the first time in days. The trust can't sell, demolish, or significantly alter the property without unanimous consent from all trustees. Jennifer is one of 3 trustees. The others are you and Catherine Hartley. Margaret's sister has already indicated she'll never consent to demolition. But the contracts with Hartfield developers, worthless. Jennifer signed as an individual, not as the trust. She's personally liable for any cancellation penalties. Sam leaned forward. Margaret documented everything. She has recordings of Jennifer discussing the demolition plans while Margaret was alive, evidence of financial manipulation, even proof that Jennifer was medicating Margaret beyond prescribed doses to keep her compliant during document signings. Dear God, the full scope of my daughter's betrayal hit me anew. Her own mother. Margaret also hired a private investigator. Would you like to see what he found? The next hour was a revelation. The investigator's report detailed Jennifer and Bradley's mounting debts, bad investments in cryptocurrency, and Bradley's gambling problem. They'd been counting on Margaret's death to solve their financial crisis. The plans for the property weren't just about greed. They were desperate. What do I do now? I asked finally. First, we wait for the will reading. Let Jennifer think she's won. Margaret insisted on using Bradley's law firm for the public reading, knowing they'd only present the main will. They don't know about the codicil filed separately. We'll let them have their moment. And then we spring the trap. But first, you need somewhere better to stay than that motel. Margaret anticipated this too. He handed me a key. She bought a small apartment 6 months ago, put it in a trust under your name. Said you'd need a safe place to land when the storm hit. It's fully furnished, utilities paid for a year. I looked at the key, emotion overwhelming me. Even facing death, Margaret had been protecting me, planning for contingencies, building safety nets I hadn't even known I'd need. Over the next 3 days, I settled into the apartment while playing the part of the displaced, confused father. I answered Jennifer's texts, minimally confirming I was looking into appropriate facilities. Meanwhile, I worked with Sam to document everything. My old phone proved invaluable. I'd recorded Jennifer's cruel dismissal on the morning of my eviction, her admission that she'd signed contracts before Margaret's death, every cold, calculating word. The phone had been in my shirt pocket, forgotten in my shock, but faithfully capturing evidence. Mike Sullivan visited on the 2nd day, finding me through Sam. Arthur, the whole crew's talking about what Jennifer did. It ain't right throwing you out of the house you built. Some of the boys want to pay her a visit, explain proper respect. No, I said firmly. This needs to be handled legally. But Mike, I might need character witnesses later. People who knew Margaret and me who can speak to our life together. You got 20 men who'd stand up in court for you tomorrow. Just say the word. Catherine called that evening, her voice tight with controlled fury. Arthur, I just got off the phone with my darling niece. She had the audacity to ask if I'd sign off on the demolition plans. Said it's what Margaret would have wanted. What did you tell her? That I'd see her in hell first. Catherine's laugh was bitter. Margaret warned me this might happen. Said Jennifer had shown her true colors. I'm flying back from Boston tomorrow. We need to coordinate. The will reading was scheduled for Friday afternoon. Jennifer texted me the details, adding, "Please dress appropriately, Dad." The Hartley name still means something in this community. I wanted to respond that she'd forfeited any claim to the Hartley name the moment she'd betrayed her mother, but I held my tongue. The wolf was patient. The wolf waited for the perfect moment to strike. The night before the reading, I sat in my temporary apartment looking at Margaret's photo. "I trust the plan, sweetheart," I whispered. "I just hope I'm strong enough to see it through." My phone buzzed with another text from Jennifer. "Found a perfect place for you, Dad. Sunset Manor has a unit available. I've already put down a deposit. You can move in right after tomorrow's reading." I deleted the message without responding. Tomorrow, Jennifer would learn what her mother had known all along, that the strongest foundations are often invisible until weight is applied. And when they finally reveal themselves, they can support or destroy everything built upon them. The waiting was almost over. The wolf was ready to show his teeth. Friday arrived with the kind of crisp autumn weather that made Connecticut look like a postcard. I dressed carefully in my best suit, the charcoal gray one Margaret had bought me for our 40th anniversary. Looking in the mirror, I saw an old man with tired eyes, but a straight spine. Today, I would need both grief and strength. The offices of Morrison Krentz and Associates occupied the top floor of a gleaming building in downtown Hartford. As I entered the marble lobby, I thought about the irony of meeting in Bradley's territory, surrounded by the trappings of success he'd built on a foundation of other people's misfortunes. The elevator ride to the 20th floor felt like ascending to judgment. When the doors opened, Jennifer was already there, perfectly positioned to make an entrance. She wore a black suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage, her hair professionally styled, makeup flawless. The grieving daughter had transformed into the corporate executive, ready to claim her inheritance. "Dad," she said, her voice carrying across the reception area. "You look presentable. I was worried you might not find appropriate attire at whatever hotel you've been staying at." "The Seaside Motor Lodge has everything I need," I replied, watching her face flicker with satisfaction at confirmation of my reduced circumstances. Bradley emerged from a conference room, his expression professionally neutral. "Arthur, thank you for coming. We're just waiting on a few more people before we begin." "Who else is coming?" Jennifer asked, a slight frown creasing her carefully Botoxed forehead. "I thought this was just family." "There are multiple beneficiaries named in Margaret's will," Bradley explained. "We're legally required to notify all of them." As if on cue, the elevator chimed, and Catherine stepped out, dressed in navy blue and radiating disapproval. She kissed my cheek warmly before turning to Jennifer with Arctic politeness. "Jennifer, how nice that you could spare time from demolishing family history to attend your mother's will reading." "Aunt Catherine," Jennifer replied through gritted teeth. "I wasn't aware you were mentioned in Mother's will." "There's quite a lot you're not aware of, dear," Catherine said sweetly, taking my arm. "Shall we go in, Arthur?" The conference room was imposing, all glass and steel with views of the Hartford skyline. Emma and Tyler were already seated at the massive table, looking uncomfortable in their school uniforms. They'd been pulled from classes for this moment their mother deemed too important to miss. Thomas Whitman, the estate attorney from Bradley's firm, arranged papers at the head of the table with nervous precision. I noticed his hands trembling slightly and wondered what had him so anxious. Next to him sat another man I didn't recognize, silver-haired with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Before we begin," Whitman said, clearing his throat, "I should note that we have an observer present. This is Jonathan Hartley from the Hartley Trust's Board of Directors. He's here to ensure proper execution of trust-related provisions." Jennifer's face went pale. "Uncle Jonathan, I didn't know you were involved with the trust anymore." Margaret asked me to take a more active role recently. Jonathan replied, his tone giving away nothing. Family obligation, you understand. I hadn't seen Jonathan Hartley in 15 years, but Margaret had mentioned corresponding with him about family history for a genealogy project. Now I wondered if that project had been something else entirely. Well then, Whitman began, his voice slightly unsteady. Let's proceed with the reading of the last will and testament of Margaret Eleanor Hartley Brennan. The first part went exactly as Jennifer expected. The house to her, the contents to be distributed as she saw fit, the Hartley Trust assets, transferring to her control. With each bequest, Jennifer's posture straightened, her smile growing more triumphant. Bradley took notes, probably calculating their net worth with each announced asset. To my husband, Arthur Brennan. Whitman read, I leave a monthly allowance of $1,500 to be administered through the trust, as long as he maintains appropriate living arrangements approved by the trustee. Jennifer shot me a look of false sympathy. Don't worry, Dad. I'll make sure you're comfortable. Sunset Manor is really quite nice. Whitman continued through smaller bequests to charity Margaret's Hospital Auxiliary and her book club. Then he paused, shuffling papers with increasing nervousness. That concludes the main body of the will, he said. However, there is an additional document that was filed with the probate court, a codicil that I've just been made aware of. What? Bradley half rose from his chair. That's impossible. I reviewed all the estate documents myself. The codicil was filed separately, a new voice said from the doorway. Samuel Patterson entered carrying a briefcase and wearing the expression of a man about to enjoy himself immensely. Through my office, as per Margaret Brennan's explicit instructions. My apologies for being late. Traffic was murderous. You can't just waltz in here, Bradley sputtered. This is a private reading. Actually, Sam said pleasantly, as the attorney who filed the codicil, I'm required to be present for its reading. State law. You can look it up. He nodded to me and Catherine before taking a seat. Please continue, Mr. Whitman. Whitman looked like he wanted to be anywhere else, but he accepted the documents Sam provided. His face grew paler with each page he read. Finally, he began, his voice barely above a whisper. Codicil to the last will and testament of Margaret Eleanor Hartley Brennan, executed this 3rd day of August 2024. All bequests made in the primary, will dated August 20th, 2024, are hereby made conditional upon the following requirements. Jennifer leaned forward, her manicured nails digging into the conference table's polished surface. Whitman continued. The beneficiary, Jennifer Brennan Morrison, must provide appropriate care, suitable housing, and emotional support for my beloved husband, Arthur Brennan, from the moment of my death until his natural passing. This care shall include, but not be limited to, maintaining his residence in the family home, ensuring his financial security beyond the stated allowance, and treating him with the respect and dignity deserved by a loving husband and father. That's ridiculous, Jennifer interrupted. I've already arranged for his care at a wonderful facility. Please let me finish, Whitman said weakly. Any violation of these conditions, including but not limited to eviction, forced relocation, institutionalization against his will, emotional abuse, or financial manipulation, will result in the immediate and complete reversion of all assets to Arthur Brennan. The sole arbiter of whether these conditions have been met is the designated trustee for this provision, Arthur Brennan himself. The conference room erupted. Jennifer shot to her feet, her face flushed with rage. That's impossible. You can't make someone the judge of their own case. This is fraud. It's perfectly legal, Sam interjected calmly. Unusual, perhaps, but Margaret was quite specific in her instructions. She felt Arthur would be the most qualified person to determine if he was being properly cared for. But I've already evicted him, Jennifer blurted out, then clamped her mouth shut as she realized what she'd admitted. Jonathan Hartley spoke for the first time. Evicted him from the family home. When did this occur? 3 days after the funeral, I said quietly. She changed the locks and gave me 1 hour to pack a suitcase. Dad's exaggerating, Jennifer said desperately. I was helping him transition to more appropriate housing. I have it all on video. I continued pulling out my phone. Would you like to hear what she said as she threw me out? This is entrapment, Bradley shouted, his face purple with rage. You set us up. Actually, Catherine said, speaking for the first time, you set yourselves up the moment you started planning to demolish the house, while Margaret was still breathing. Oh yes, we know about the Hartfield contracts, the ones you signed 2 weeks before my sister died. Emma and Tyler were staring at their parents in horror, the full scope of what was happening finally dawning on them. Emma, always the more perceptive of the two, had tears streaming down her face. Mom, she whispered, did you really throw Grandpa out of his house? It's complicated, sweetheart, Jennifer said, trying to regain control. Grandpa needs special care. I'm sitting right here, I said firmly. And the only thing I need is the home I built and the life your mother stole from me. Sam opened his briefcase, pulling out more documents. There's more, I'm afraid. The $43 million in the Hartley Trust. It was moved to a dual signature account 3 weeks before Margaret's death. Any withdrawal over $10,000 requires both the beneficiaries and the trustees' signatures. Since Jennifer has violated the care provisions, Arthur is no longer obligated to sign anything. You can't do this, Jennifer said, her voice rising to a near shriek. That money is mine, Mother promised. Your mother promised you everything conditional on you taking care of your father, Jonathan said sternly. Instead, you've proven yourself unworthy of the Hartley name. I'm ashamed to call you family. Furthermore, Sam continued relentlessly, the house itself was placed in the Hartley Family Preservation Trust. Jennifer is one of 3 trustees. The other 2 are Arthur and Catherine. Any sale or alteration requires unanimous consent. Which you'll never get, Catherine added with satisfaction. But the contracts with Hartfield, Bradley said weakly. We've already signed them. Yes, you have, Sam agreed. As individuals, not as representatives of the trust. You're personally liable for any penalties. I believe the cancellation fee is $2 million. Jennifer collapsed back into her chair, the full magnitude of her situation crashing down on her. In her greed and haste, she'd lost everything, trapped by her own mother's foresight and her father's patience. There must be a way to fight this, she said desperately. We'll contest the will claim, undue influence, mental incapacity. Something you could try, Sam said mildly. Of course, then, we'd have to present evidence of your activities in the weeks before Margaret's death. The private investigator she hired was quite thorough. Documented meetings with developers, recorded conversations about putting Arthur in a memory care facility, even evidence of you increasing Margaret's pain medication to keep her compliant during document signings. That's a lie, Jennifer protested, but her voice lacked conviction. It's all here, I said, speaking directly to my daughter for the first time since revealing the trap. Your mother knew what you were planning. She heard you on the phone, saw the sketches for the condos, watched you counting her money before she was even gone. And she protected me, even from beyond the grave. But why? Jennifer asked, tears finally breaking through her perfect makeup. Why would she do this to me? She didn't do it to you, I said sadly. She did it for you. Margaret hoped that losing everything might teach you what actually matters in life. Family, love, loyalty. Things you can't buy or sell or demolish for profit. The room fell silent except for Emma's quiet sobs and the hum of the air conditioning. Tyler reached over to take his sister's hand, the first genuinely kind gesture I'd seen from either of them in years. Whitman cleared his throat uncomfortably. Given these circumstances, it appears the entire estate reverts to Mr. Brennan. Jennifer's violation of the care provisions is clear and documented. The reversion is automatic and immediate. No! Jennifer lunged across the table, grasping for the documents. There has to be a mistake. Check again, Mother wouldn't do this to me. Bradley caught her arms, pulling her back. His face had gone from purple to gray as he calculated their financial ruin. Without the inheritance, they couldn't cover their debts, couldn't pay the penalties to Hartfield, couldn't maintain their lifestyle. They'd gambled everything on Margaret's death and lost it all. I think we're done here, Jonathan Hartley said, standing with dignity. Arthur, on behalf of the Hartley family, I apologize for what you've endured. Margaret chose her husband well. You've shown more grace and restraint than most men would have managed. As everyone began to file out, Jennifer remained slumped in her chair, Bradley hovering uselessly beside her. Emma approached me hesitantly, mascara streaking her young face. "Grandpa," she said softly, "I'm sorry. I didn't know what Mom was planning. I should have said something when she made you leave." I opened my arms and she fell into them, sobbing against my chest, like she had as a little girl. Over her head, I met Tyler's eyes, seeing shame and regret in their depths. "Can we—" Tyler started, then stopped, swallowing hard. "Can we still visit you at the house?" "It's your home, too," I told them both. "It always has been. Your grandmother wanted it to be a place of love and family, not contracts and developments. You're welcome anytime." Jennifer watched this exchange with something like wonder, as if seeing her children's genuine emotion for the first time in years. When she finally spoke, her voice was broken, defeated. "What am I supposed to do now?" "That's up to you," I said, gently releasing Emma. "Your mother's gift to you wasn't the money, Jennifer. It was the chance to choose differently, to become the daughter she knew you could be, not the stranger you'd become." I walked to the door, then turned back one last time. "The house will be there when you're ready to come home. Not as an heir or a developer, but as my daughter. The question is whether you'll ever find your way back." With Sam and Catherine flanking me, I left the conference room and Bradley's gleaming office building. In the elevator, Catherine squeezed my hand. "Margaret would be proud," she said softly. "You played that perfectly." "I didn't play anything," I replied, watching the floors count down to the lobby. "I just trusted my wife's plan and let Jennifer reveal her true nature. The rest was inevitable." As we emerged into the afternoon sunshine, I thought about Margaret's final gift. Not the money or the house, but the chance for redemption she'd built into her trap. The question now was whether Jennifer would take it or whether she'd remain trapped in the prison of her own making. Only time would tell. But for now, I was going home. The drive back to Westbrook felt different this time, like a soldier returning from war to find familiar landscapes transformed by experience. Sam Patterson followed in his Lincoln, insisting on being present when I reclaimed my home. Catherine rode with me, her presence a comforting reminder of Margaret's strength. "She planned every detail," Catherine said as we turned onto Maple Street. "Even predicted Jennifer would evict you within a week of the funeral. Margaret said Jennifer's greed would make her impatient sloppy." "How long have you known about the codicil?" "Since she wrote it. I witnessed it along with Jonathan and Sam's secretary. Margaret made us all promise to say nothing until the trap was sprung." Catherine's voice grew thick with emotion. She said the hardest part was pretending to go along with Jennifer's manipulations those last weeks, signing those worthless documents to make her believe she'd won. We pulled into the driveway of my home, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the lawn I'd mowed just 2 weeks ago before my world imploded. The new locks gleamed mockingly in the light. Sam parked behind us and emerged carrying a toolbox. "Thought we might need these," he said, producing a set of bolt cutters. "Unless you want to wait for a locksmith." "Cut them," I said firmly. "Jennifer can bill me for new locks." As Sam worked on the front door, a familiar pickup truck rumbled up the street. Mike Sullivan and 3 of my former crew members climbed out, their faces split with satisfied grins. "Heard you might need some help reclaiming your castle," Mike said, clasping my shoulder. "The boys wanted to make sure there was no trouble." "No trouble expected," I assured him, touched by their loyalty. But I'm glad you're here. The lock gave way with a satisfying snap. I pushed open the door to find chaos inside. In just 3 days, Jennifer had begun dismantling 4 decades of careful homemaking. Boxes lined the hallway labeled Donate, Sell, and Trash. Margaret's china cabinet stood empty, its contents presumably already claimed or sold. "Good God!" Catherine breathed, taking in the destruction. "She didn't waste any time, did she?" We moved through the house, documenting everything. The master bedroom had been stripped of all personal touches, Margaret's clothes gone, her jewelry box empty. But Jennifer had made a crucial error in her haste. She'd left her laptop open on Margaret's desk, still logged into her email. "Sam, I called, you might want to see this." The screen showed an email thread with Hartfield developers dating back 2 months. The messages detailed Jennifer's negotiations, her promises of a quick sale, her assurances that the old man won't be a problem. One email dated a week before Margaret's death made my blood run cold. "Once we have the death certificate, we can move immediately. I've already got Dad convinced he needs professional care. If he resists my husband's connections at Sunset Manor, can have him declared incompetent. Either way, you'll have your property by October." Sam whistled low. "That's conspiracy to commit elder abuse fraud and false imprisonment. Jennifer's in deeper trouble than she realizes." My phone rang. Jennifer's name on the screen. I put it on speaker. "Dad!" Her voice was ragged, desperate. "Please, we need to talk. This is all a misunderstanding." "Which part, Jennifer? Throwing me out of my home or planning to have me declared incompetent?" Silence then. "You saw the emails. Your laptop was open. Careless, just like your mother predicted." "I'm at the house," she said. And indeed, through the window, I could see her BMW pulling up. "Please, just let me explain." I met her at the door, blocking her entry. My daughter looked haggard, her perfect composure shattered. Bradley sat in the car, shoulders slumped in defeat. Emma and Tyler were nowhere to be seen. "Where are the kids?" "I sent them to Bradley's parents. They're very upset." She took a shuddering breath. "Dad, I know what I did was wrong, but I was desperate. Bradley made some bad investments, cryptocurrency and sports betting. We're in debt up to our eyeballs. The only way out was to steal your inheritance before your mother was even cold. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." The words burst out of her. "Mom was supposed to leave everything to me anyway. I'm the only child. It's what families like the Hartleys do. I just accelerated things. By plotting to have me institutionalized, by turning my grandchildren against me, by throwing me out like garbage." Jennifer's face crumbled. "I didn't mean what I said about finding somewhere else to die. I was angry and scared and showing your true colors," Catherine interjected from behind me. "Your mother saw through you, Jennifer. That's why she protected Arthur." "But what am I supposed to do now?" Jennifer wailed. "We owe $2 million to Hartfield for breaking the contract. Bradley's being investigated by his firm for misusing client funds. We're going to lose everything." "You already have," I said quietly. "The question is what you're going to do about it." Bradley had emerged from the car, approaching cautiously. "Arthur, sir, I know I have no right to ask, but is there any chance you might reconsider for the children's sake? The children who sat in your car while their mother threw me out. Those children—" He had the grace to look ashamed. "They didn't understand. Jennifer told them you were sick, needed professional care. They believed their mother. And now they know she's a liar," Jennifer said bitterly. "Emma won't even speak to me. Tyler asked if we were going to be homeless." I studied my daughter, looking for any sign of the little girl who'd once helped me build birdhouses in the garage, who'd brought me Father's Day cards made with construction paper and too much glitter. That child seemed as dead as her mother. "There might be a way," I said finally, and Jennifer's head snapped up with desperate hope. "But it comes with conditions, non-negotiable ones." "Anything," she said immediately. "Please, Dad, anything." First, you and Bradley will sign a full confession of your activities, including the conspiracy to have me declared incompetent. Sam will keep it as insurance against any future schemes." Jennifer paled but nodded. Bradley started to protest, but she silenced him with a look. "Second, you'll work for me, both of you. I'm restarting Brennan Construction with Mike Sullivan. You'll work crews, learn what actual labor means, earn honest money for the first time in your lives. Minimum wage to start." "Manual labor." Bradley looked horrified. "I'm an attorney." "Not for long if your firm's investigation goes the way I think it will," Sam observed dryly. "Third," I continued, "you'll attend family counseling with me and the children. Every week, no excuses. You'll learn how to be a real family again, not a business arrangement." "And if we do all this?" Jennifer asked. "Then I'll cover the Hartfield penalty, keep you out of jail, and let you earn your way back into the family. Not as heirs or beneficiaries, but as my daughter and son-in-law. The money Margaret left will go into trust for Emma and Tyler's education, and to charity, as she would have wanted." All of it. Bradley's mercenary instincts died hard. "Every penny," I confirmed. "You'll live on what you earn in a house you can afford on construction wages. You'll shop with coupons, drive used cars, and learn what most Americans already know: how to value what matters." Jennifer was crying now, not the pretty tears of manipulation, but raw, ugly sobs of genuine emotion. "Why would you do this after what I did?" "Because your mother's last wish wasn't about money or houses. It was about saving your soul. And because somewhere inside the greedy, grasping woman you've become is still my daughter. The question is whether you're willing to dig her out." Mike Sullivan stepped forward. "Just so you know, ma'am, I don't tolerate any special treatment on my crews. You'll haul lumber mix concrete and swing hammers like everyone else. Think you can handle that?" Jennifer looked at her manicured nails, probably calculating their replacement cost. Then she straightened, and for the first time in years, I saw a flash of Margaret's steel in her spine. "I can handle it," she said firmly. "When do I start?" "Monday, 6 a.m. sharp," Mike replied. "Bring work boots and gloves, and leave the BMW at home. It'll get laughed off the job site." As Jennifer and Bradley returned to their car to begin their transformed life, Catherine marveled at the turn of events. "Do you really think they'll change?" Margaret did, or she wouldn't have built in this possibility for redemption. She knew Jennifer better than anyone. If she believed our daughter could be saved, who am I to doubt her? The house felt different now, emptier without Margaret, but somehow still full of her presence. Sam helped me contact a security company to change the locks properly, while Mike and his crew began moving boxes back where they belonged. Room by room, we restored order to the chaos Jennifer had created. That evening, as the sun set over the Connecticut hills, I sat on the porch. Margaret and I had added 10 years ago, sipping coffee from her favorite mug. The house was mine again. The money was safe from grasping hands, and my daughter had a chance at redemption. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Grandpa, can Tyler and I come stay with you this weekend? Mom says she has to go shopping for work boots." I smiled, typing back, "Your room is ready. Grandma would love knowing you're here." Another text, this time from Jennifer. "Dad, I'm scared. What if I can't do this?" My response was simple. "Your mother believed in you. So do I. See you Monday at 6. As darkness fell over Westbrook, I thought about the strange journey that had brought me here. From the heights of a happy marriage to the depths of betrayal and loss, through the careful spring of Margaret's trap to this moment of possibility. The wolf had shown his teeth, the trap had been sprung, and justice had been served. But in her infinite wisdom, Margaret had ensured that justice came with mercy, that punishment included the possibility of redemption. She'd known that the greatest inheritance she could leave wasn't money or property, but the chance for her family to find its way back to love. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Jennifer would struggle with manual labor. Bradley would rage against his fallen status, and I'd have to learn how to be both father and mother, to grandchildren who'd been taught to see me as disposable. But tonight, in the home I'd built with my own hands, surrounded by the ghost of the woman I'd loved for 4 decades, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Margaret's diagnosis. Hope. The reversal was complete, but the real story was just beginning. 6 months later, I stood in the doorway of my workshop, watching Jennifer measure and cut a piece of lumber with focused precision. Her hands, once soft and manicured, now bore calluses and small scars from honest work. Sawdust clung to her hair, and her safety vest was properly worn, no longer the afterthought it had been during her first weeks on Mike's crew. "1/4 inch too long," she muttered, marking the adjustment before heading back to the saw. She'd developed a good eye for measurements, something that had surprised both of us. The transformation hadn't been easy or quick. That first Monday, Jennifer had arrived at the job site in designer jeans and decorative boots that wouldn't have protected her from a dropped nail. Mike had sent her home to change, and she'd returned in borrowed gear, humiliated but determined. By noon, she was sobbing in the portable toilet, her muscles screaming and her pride shattered. But she'd finished the day and returned the next morning, and the one after that. Bradley's journey had been different, but equally humbling. Disbarred after his firm's investigation revealed multiple instances of client fund misuse, he'd joined the crew 2 weeks after Jennifer. The former attorney, who'd once billed $700 an hour, now earned 15 cleaning job sites and learning to operate power tools under the watchful eye of men he'd have dismissed as beneath him 6 months ago. Arthur, Mike, called from across the yard where we were framing a new house, ironically not far from where Hartfield developers had planned their luxury condos. "Your grandson's here." Tyler jogged over, having grown 2 inches since the will reading. He spent most weekends with me now, along with Emma, who was inside studying for her SATs. Both children had chosen to live primarily with me, after their parents downsized to a 2-bedroom rental near the construction yard. "Grandpa, Mom asked me to give you this," Tyler said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a handwritten note on plain paper, a far cry from Jennifer's former custom stationery. "Dad, the family counselor suggested I write down my thoughts about Mom and what I've learned. I wanted you to read it first. Love, Jenny." I unfolded the pages, settling on a sawbuck to read, while Tyler grabbed a broom to help with cleanup, having learned that everyone contributed on a Brennan job site. "Dear Dad." The letter began, "Dr. Martinez asked me to write about Mom, but every time I try, I realize I never really knew her. I knew she came from money, that she loved her garden, that she made the best apple pie in Connecticut. But I never understood her strength, her wisdom, or how much she truly loved us all." The letter went on to detail Jennifer's recognition of her failures, her growing understanding of what she'd thrown away in pursuit of money. She wrote about the physical pain of construction work, giving way to the satisfaction of building something real, of earning her paycheck rather than scheming for it. Most touchingly, she wrote about rediscovering her children, who'd become strangers while she focused on social climbing and wealth accumulation. "Mom saw through me," she wrote. "Even dying, she loved me enough to save me from myself. I hated her for it at first, hated you for enforcing her plan. But yesterday, a young couple came to look at the house we're building. They reminded me of you and Mom, when you built our home full of dreams and love, instead of profit margins. I finally understood what I almost destroyed. Not just a house, but a home. Not just an inheritance, but a legacy of love. I'm sorry, Dad. And I'm grateful." I wiped my eyes, tucking the letter carefully into my pocket. Jennifer had found her way back not to wealth or status, but to humanity. Margaret's plan had worked better than even she might have hoped. "Mr. B." One of the newer crew members approached nervously. "Mrs. Morrison asked if you could check her work on the kitchen framing. She wants to make sure it's right." I smiled at his use of Mrs. Morrison instead of the boss's daughter, or worse, which would have been common 6 months ago. Jennifer had earned her place on the crew through sweat and determination, and the men had come to respect her for it. I found her in what would be the kitchen, double-checking every measurement against the blueprints. Her transformation went beyond the physical. Gone was the entitled executive who'd thrown me out of my home. In her place stood a woman who understood the value of honest work and the peso of every nail. "Looks good," I said, inspecting her framing. "You've got your mother's eye for detail." Jennifer's face lit up at the comparison to Margaret. "Remember when she insisted on redesigning our kitchen 3 times because the workflow wasn't right? She cooked in that kitchen for 40 years. She knew what worked." I paused, then added, "She'd be proud of you, Jenny." "You think so?" The vulnerability in her voice reminded me of the little girl who'd once asked if her crayon drawings were good enough for the refrigerator. "I know so. She believed you'd find your way back. That's why she built redemption into her plan." Jennifer nodded, blinking back tears. "I got a call from Hartfield yesterday. They heard about our work here, wanted to know if I'd consult on making their developments more family-friendly. I told them I was busy learning to build homes, not just houses. That evening, we gathered for our new Sunday tradition dinner at the family home. Emma and Tyler helped me cook, while Jennifer and Bradley set the table with Margaret's china, carefully recovered from the estate sale, where Jennifer had tried to sell it. "I can't believe Mom was going to auction Grandma's wedding china," Emma said, drying a platter with reverence. "These dishes have been in the family for 60 years. Your mother's learned what's truly valuable," I said, watching Jennifer arrange flowers from Margaret's garden in the centerpiece. "Sometimes, we have to lose everything to understand what matters." Bradley entered carrying firewood, his soft hands now capable of real work. The humbling had been good for him too. Without his law license or BMW, he'd discovered simpler pleasures, teaching Tyler to throw a football, helping Emma with her college essays, learning to repair rather than replace. "Arthur," he said, stacking wood by the fireplace, "I wanted to thank you again for everything. I know I don't deserve the second chance." "None of us deserve grace," I replied, "but we receive it anyway. That's what makes it grace." We sat down to dinner in the dining room where Margaret had hosted 40 years of family gatherings. Her portrait, painted for our 35th anniversary, smiled down at us from the wall. The table was fuller now than it had been in years, with Mike and his wife joining us, along with Catherine, who'd moved back from Boston to be closer to family. "Before we eat," I said, raising my water glass, "I want to propose a toast to Margaret, who loved us enough to save us from ourselves, and to second chances, which are really just first chances to get things right." "To Mom," Jennifer echoed, her voice strong. "Who knew that the best inheritance isn't what we receive, but what we become?" We clinked glasses and began passing dishes, the conversation flowing naturally. Emma excitedly discussed her college plans, funded by the trust I'd established with part of Margaret's money. Tyler debated whether to join the construction crew full-time after high school or pursue engineering. Jennifer and Mike discussed the next project, a affordable housing development that would provide homes for working families. "You know," Catherine observed, helping herself to mashed potatoes, "Margaret would have loved this. All of us together, Jennifer building, instead of destroying the grandchildren, choosing substance over surface. She played a long game, and she won." After dinner, as the others cleared dishes and the kids started a board game, Jennifer asked to speak with me privately. We stepped onto the porch, the spring evening, mild and full of promise. "Dad," she began, then stopped, gathering courage. "I know I can never undo what I did. The words I said, the betrayal, the pain I caused. But I want you to know that every day I work to be worthy of your forgiveness and Mom's faith in me." "You already are," I said simply. "The Jennifer who threw me out died the day you picked up your first hammer. The woman standing here is my daughter, the one your mother always knew existed under the greed and ambition." She hugged me, then the first real embrace we'd shared since Margaret's diagnosis. Through the window, I could see the rest of our family laughing and arguing over game rules, being genuinely present with each other in a way that all the money in the world couldn't buy. "There's something else," Jennifer said, pulling back. "Bradley and I have been saving every penny we can. We want to pay back the Hartfield penalty ourselves. It'll take years, but we need to do it, to really earn our fresh start." "Your mother would like that," I agreed. "Building your future on a foundation of integrity instead of schemes." A car pulled into the driveway, and Sam Patterson emerged, carrying a bottle of wine and wearing a broad smile. "Hope I'm not too late for dessert. I have news that couldn't wait until Monday." We gathered everyone in the living room, where Sam announced that the prosecutors had officially declined to pursue charges against Jennifer and Bradley, citing their full cooperation and the restitution already made. Additionally, Jonathan Hartley and the Trust Board had voted to release $10 million for the affordable housing project, impressed by Jennifer's transformation and commitment to community building. "There's one condition," Sam added, his eyes twinkling. "The development must be named Margaret's Garden, and the community center must include teaching kitchens for family cooking classes." Jennifer burst into tears, but they were tears of joy this time. "She's still taking care of us," she whispered. "Even now." As the evening wound down and people began to leave, I found myself alone in Margaret's garden, the roses she'd planted blooming in profusion. The moon was rising, casting silver light over the place where our life together had flourished. "Well, sweetheart," I said softly to the night air, "your plan worked perfectly. Jennifer's home, really home, not just in the house, but in her heart. The grandchildren are growing into people you'd be proud of. And me, I'm learning to live without you while still feeling you everywhere." A warm breeze stirred the roses, carrying their scent to me like a caress. Somewhere in the house, I heard laughter, my family enjoying each other's company without agenda or greed. The home I'd built with my hands had become again what Margaret always insisted: it should be a place of love, growth, and second chances. I thought about the journey from that terrible morning when Jennifer threw me out to this moment of quiet gratitude. The pain had been real, the betrayal deep, but Margaret had known that destruction could lead to reconstruction, that sometimes we have to tear down to build better. "Thank you," I whispered, whether to Margaret, to God, or to the universe that had allowed such redemption. "Thank you for the plan, the pain, and the possibility of putting our family back together." Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The affordable housing project would test Jennifer's newfound principles. The grandchildren would face their own temptations as they grew. Bradley would have to continue choosing humility over his natural arrogance. And I would have to guide them all without Margaret's wisdom to rely on, though her love still surrounded us like the foundation of a well-built house. But tonight in the garden she'd loved, in the home we'd built, surrounded by the family she'd saved, I felt the deep satisfaction of a life well lived and a love that transcended death. Margaret's final gift hadn't been money or property, but the chance for redemption, the opportunity to choose love over greed, family over fortune. The wolf had shown his teeth, the trap had been sprung, and justice had been served. But in the end, it wasn't about winning or losing, punishing or profiting. It was about coming home in every sense that mattered. As I walked back to the house where Emma was playing piano, while Tyler turned the pages of her sheet music, where Jennifer and Bradley washed dishes side by side, like the partners they'd finally become, I understood Margaret's deepest wisdom. She'd known that the strongest families aren't those bound by money or manipulation, but by choice, the daily decision to show up, work hard, and love each other despite our failures. The house stood strong around us, built on foundations both visible and invisible. And somewhere, I knew Margaret was smiling, her plan complete, her family whole, her love eternal. In the end, that's what inheritance really means. Not what we leave behind, but what we build together, what survives our failures and transcends our mortality. Margaret had left us the greatest gift of all, the chance to be a family again, and we'd finally proven worthy of it. Looking back at all that happened from that rainy morning when I stood locked out of my own home to this peaceful evening, surrounded by family, I realized the truth of what Margaret always said. The things that matter most can't be bought, sold, or stolen. They can only be built day by day, choice by choice, with love as the foundation and forgiveness as the frame. And that's a lesson worth more than $43 million. That's a legacy worth leaving. That's a love worth living for. So if you find yourself facing betrayal by those you love, most remember Margaret's wisdom. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the chance to fail, fall, and find their way back home. And sometimes the strongest response to cruelty isn't revenge, but redemption patiently planned and lovingly executed. Trust the plan, love the process, and never forget that the best inheritance isn't what you leave to your children, but what you teach them about what truly matters. After all, houses can be demolished, money can be lost, and locks can be changed. But love, real love, builds foundations that last forever. I'd like to ask you something. Have you ever faced a situation where someone you trusted betrayed you? How did you handle it? Did you seek revenge or offer redemption? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read everyone and often find wisdom in your experiences that helps others facing similar challenges. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of what's truly important in life, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about family redemption and the power of patient love. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to come home, never too late to choose family over fortune. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Until next time, remember, build your life on love, frame it with forgiveness, and trust that even in our darkest moments, someone who loves us may be working on a plan for our redemption. God bless, and hold your families close tonight.